Hello again, and welcome to the Prince Magnum channel. I'm your host, Prince Magnum. Welcome to In Your Face. We're going to take a look into my past and talk about my old 78 Camaro that I lovingly called Blue Thunder. Um, when I say we look into my past, we're talking this is 1997, 1998, long time ago. And basically, I'm fresh out of high school. This was the perfect car for the perfect time. It was a great mixture. Um, at the time when I seen Blue Thunder, she was a basic 1978 Camaro Berlinetta. And unfortunately, due to the time frame, there isn't much in the way of pictures or video footage. It's just that's the way it is. What you're actually seeing is video footage from a video game, Midnight Club 3, the dub edition. And this is actually a pretty close replica to what Blue Thunder ended up looking like. She didn't have the fender flares and the side scoops and all of that like the Z28s at the time. She didn't even have a hood scoop. Um, she didn't have T-tops. She was just a basic sporty coupe, two-door coupe. Just your standard run-of-the-mill Camaro. She did have the spoiler and this real dinky little air dam up front. Uh, but she was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Um, she had a 305, 350 turbo, and 308 single track rear end, 14-inch tires and wheels to start with. Um, at the time when I seen her for the first time, I was working on a 1971 Nova, and that was my first car. Um, Basically, what happened there was is my dad and I had a big dispute over the Nova, and it was basically dealing with body work. And typical teenager fashion, I flipped Dad the Bird and traded the Nova for the Camaro. Sometimes I kind of kick myself for that, but then again, I'm kind of glad I ended up with the Camaro. I really wanted the Camaro more than the Nova, to be honest with you. Um, so I went to go out shortly afterwards and kind of make some adjustments to the engine. And what ended up happening was I went to kick her over and she threw a rod right through the side of the engine block. So that was the end of her 305. And she didn't even have quite 200,000 miles on her, which really ticks me off. That's one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of 305s. But hey, that's just me. If you like them, go with it. Um, so I continued to work on her and finish the body work. And we were searching for an engine. And I had already amassed some stuff and was going to do some wheeling and dealing if I found the right engine. And but instead, what happened was is my old moonshining friend Johnny steps in and says, "I've got an engine sitting in the garage ready to go. Um, why don't you just go ahead and put it in the car?" And I said, "Well, I don't have any money to give you." He said, "You're like a grandson to me. Take the engine. I'm not doing anything with it. It's just sitting there." I said, "Okay, fine." I wasn't going to argue. You don't look a gift horse in the mouth. And basically, he gave me a small block 400 out of a 74 Impala. Um, we dropped the engine in, and when we went to go hook up the exhaust for the 305, one of the first things that we ran into problems with was there was some differences between the 305 that we did not know about. Basically, the 262, 267, and 305 had some differences between the exhaust manifolds. So we put on the regular, Chevy small block exhaust manifolds, for like a 350, a 327, 283, and then we ended up finding out that the exhaust was placed a little bit differently. So we had to monkey with the exhaust, and finally we got it on there, and it was really special. It sounded great. I mean, it was still the factory catback exhaust, but it sounded great. on that 400. Um, from there, the body work was done, and I'm getting ready to, we were looking for paint, and I didn't have a whole lot of money then, and in steps good old Johnny again, and he said, "What color are you going to paint him?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to paint her blue." He said, "I got just the thing. I'm not using it. Just take it, put it on the car." And basically, the color that you actually see on this replica of Blue Thunder, that was the color, the blue, and how she got her name. Um, basically how you got it was is you took the white pearlescent color, the white pearlescent from the Oldsmobile Aurora from that time, and you added 6 drops of a really dark blue metallic and stirred it in. That was Blue Thunder's baby blue color. Um, and that's what color she ended up with. The hood scoop that you actually see is actually a pretty close replica to the hood scoop that was on her. Basically, the back, it was a cowl induction hood scoop for a 60s Camaro, and it even had that little ridge that went down the middle, and it was about 4 to 5 inches tall in the back. And we mounted it on there and managed to make that ridge look really good on there. It took a little bit of effort, but we got it to really look good on there. Um, and it was a functioning hood scoop. We had cut a hole in the hood, and I mounted an Edelbrock Elite Series air cleaner on there that stuck up about an inch or two through, into the hood scoop, and it really helped out with performance. We're talking about a 400 from the 70s here, okay? So it was a great match. It was a great match. A lot of fun. A lot of fun. The wheels on Blue Thunder was the old 5-slot aluminum Magsters, or as I lovingly call them, aluminum slots. Um, by the way, these are still very sought after. The originals from the 70s. They're very sought after, very hard to find. And on the back, I actually had the deep dish. They're about 8 to 10 inches wide on the back, which really was a tight squeeze because she did not have air shocks. It was a real tight squeeze. You had to be careful who you let in the back of the car because you hit a good bump and she would rub. But boy, it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Initially, though, she did come out with 14-inch tires and wheels, but those 15s really made her grip. Initially, when I put her on the road and everything, I'll be honest with you, I really had no intentions of street racing. And a funny story, I was taking my high school sweetheart up to Mineral Area College. I'm on Highway 67, and somebody in a Dodge Intrepid basically wanted to run me and kept trying to play with me, and I finally just gave in and I opened her up. And that became the initial story. I blew the doors off of them. That was my first street race. And it was one of those things that initially I wasn't going to get into street racing, but that's how it started. Um, and I will tell you that after that, I took Blue Thunder to this carburetor guru just outside of Farmington as you're heading towards St. Genevieve on, I think, like AA Highway or something like that. I took her out there, and for $100 he monkeyed around with her original Rochester Quadrajet, and it was able to squeeze out a lot more performance out of her, and including better gas mileage. It was really awesome what he was able to do with her, and a lot of things that I just wish I could have picked up from him. But like I said, he's long gone, and I do miss having him around because I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, if you wanted a carburetor to really run, you took it to this guy. Um, Now, I did mention briefly in a video before that she had a top speed of 155 miles an hour. And then some dipshit comes on there and asks the question, well, did her speedometer go up that high? Well, no, her speedometer was only registered to 85. So some of you might be asking the question, well, okay, how do you know? Well, I'm going to answer that. One day in Ironton, I was letting out of where the old Mimosa restaurant is today. I think it's like some barbecue place now. It keeps changing, but back then it was still Mimosa. And I let out of there, smoke rolling and everything. I got clocked by a police officer. Uh, and let me tell you, that was really scary because I knew I was moving a good lick, and he told me how fast I was going. Um, Let me tell you all, if it had not been for the fact that he knew my dad and my dad was a member of the volunteer fire department in Pilot Knob, I would have went to jail that day. You know, 18 years old, I almost went to jail because I was going that fast. And I mean, I got lucky. I got lucky. If it hadn't been for the fact he knew my dad, I would have been sitting in jail over that. I'd probably still be sitting in jail because that was pretty fast. And down there, they'll throw the book at you for that shit. Uh, so that's how I knew how fast she went. I got clocked going that fast. Um, and you know, Blue Thunder was a very legendary car. Every once in a while, you'll still talk to people who remember those days. Um, as a matter of fact, I was one of the guys to beat. Now, back in those days, street racing was kind of a regional thing. So, like every area kind of had their legends, and Blue Thunder and myself, you know, we were kind of legendary at that time. We were one of the people to beat, and there was actually four of us, and one of them, you've all heard the story where one of them passed on from a car accident. The I was one of them, and one of my friends who initially helped me mount this shifter in Project Spirit, he's one of them, T-Bone, and the other one, we don't remember who that one was. We just know that he existed. Um, so it was a great time, great time. You know, street racing has changed a lot since then. It's not as it was back then, but you know, it was still good times. And one of the funniest stories I have about Blue Thunder was I was coming off of Highway 67 heading towards Pilot Knob. So I was on the off ramp for what we know I think is 221. It used to be W Highway, where the other McDonald's is in Farmington, over there by Columbia Street. And I was getting ready to take off and go down that road, and I didn't know it at the time, but there was someone behind me. I was too busy chit-chatting with a friend and my high school sweetheart at that time. Um, I just let out of there, smoke rolling and everything. We were just having a good time, just being teenagers and stuff like that. Um, but I didn't know it. There was a guy who had an '80s Camaro, and he was the one who told me the rest of the story that I'm telling you all. This Camaro was really well built. He had like 10 grand tied up in the engine. He was with his girlfriend, and he looks at his girlfriend and he says, "See that guy right there? I'm gonna beat him. He's that Camaro. Him and his Camaro are one of the people to beat in town. I'm gonna beat him today." And she said, "Okay, let's do this." She cinched up her seatbelt and everything. And when I let out of there the way I did, he kind of scrunched down in his seat and he took off real quiet, like and slow. She's like, "Well, are you gonna do this?" And he said, "Not today, baby, not today." And some of you are going, "Now wait a minute, you had a stock 400 in it. How in the world was he afraid?" Well, this is why a lot of times you'll hear me say that horsepower numbers don't mean anything. Basically because of the way everything locked up in that car, it just did not matter. That's not to say that I completely dispute, performance altogether. The horsepower numbers, I don't completely dismiss them, but you can get high top speeds if you could get everything to lock up right, and that's where the formula really worked on Blue Thunder. It was a lot of fun, a lot of fun. Wish y'all could have been there with me. Now some of you might be asking the question, well, what happened to her? Well, I was notorious for breaking things. I think at one point I broke the ear off an alternator. Basically, the final breakdown was I broke the flywheel. And for those who do not know, the 400s were externally balanced. Not like most of your Chevy small blocks where they were internally balanced. And basically what happened was I was doing something stupid, and it basically the counterweight for the flywheel came off and went through the dust cover. I got lucky. It went through the dust cover for the 350 turbo, and basically the engine kind of ran a little funny, ran out of balance. And I'm lucky I didn't tear anything up on the engine, but I ended up taking the flywheel off in like a couple different pieces. It cracked that bad. So as I was getting ready to put it back on the road, my old high school sweetheart basically said to me, it's either me or the car. And I went ahead and got rid of the car. Now, some of you and many people have said this for years. Well, you should have kept the car and got rid of the woman. Well, honestly and truthfully, I disagree with you on that. She ended up giving me two beautiful daughters. So I feel I got the better end of the deal. That's just the way I feel about it. If you'd like to hear more stories about Blue Thunder, or maybe some other old hot rodding stories, leave a comment in the below. If you're going to leave anything hateful or anything like that, please do me a favor. Don't bother, because if you do, I am either A, going to delete it, or B, I'm just going to make you look like the jackass you are. Okay, just skip it. As usual, if you like what we're doing here on the Prince Magnum channel, leave hit that subscribe button. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. As always, get out there and work on a project. If you have a sweetheart, sweep them off their feet. And as always, if nobody has told any of you that they love you today, Prince Magnum does. God bless you, and have a happy 24. Thank you.
Good night, ladies.